Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in marketing. And my guest today is Nick Zeckets, founder and CEO of Smoke Signals, former CEO at Air Traffic Control, and also the former CEO of Quadrangle. Nick has deep experience in machine learning and marketing tech, and I'm honored to have him on the show today. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
You've done so much with machine learning, martech, and as a founder and CEO of multiple
Um,
companies. What do you like about the startup experience?
the honest answer is probably not all that much. It's it's a lot of it is just a big gigantic pain in the ass. But I find it more frustrating to be in a large organization where things either move glacially or not at all. So I suppose that it's more a way to scratch my very severe, probably psychopathic itch around stasis and actually being able to make things happen. And startups are a place where you have no choice but to be making things happen. Otherwise, you lose your house.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of puts you in a position where you have to, I love it, make it happen. I've started three companies myself, so I know exactly what that feels like. Well, you've made a lot happen with a number of companies, and we're going to talk about some of the issues that you've broken through. But you and I have been having a great conversation about account-based marketing, personalization, and using machine learning to enable all that. And I just wanted to get your perspective on kind of the state of the art. What do you think is really happening today in account-based marketing? And how are people using technology to enable that capability today?
That's a great question. And I think there's a couple of ways to kind of think about it. Um, One is, I think the state of the art is redefining what account-based marketing is and what it should be, really in its original terms, right? So you had a lot of tools that evolved over the course of, the 2010 to 2015 range, the Six Senses um, and Triglios and demand bases and all these different types of tools, really focused on two things, right? Signals, which were third party from networks and told you maybe something maybe interesting, and creating and managing ad audiences.
Hmm.
Um, that's not account-based marketing. It never was. I mean, there are elements. I mean, there are tools in a very vast and deep toolkit around ABM. But what I'm most excited about right now is how tooling has come to market with a very strong set of opinions around how this stuff should work. And it's the most amazing point in time for this to be happening. I don't think that it's happening because of this, but it would have needed to happen because of the following issue, which is on the flip, there's been such an immense degree of innovation around high volume outbound, right? And with that, what we've done is made it more imperative than ever to focus on our ideal customers and to deeply, deeply define, understand, track, meaningfully engage those people because the inbox is blown up at this point, right? We marketers can't be given anything nice because we're, bound to ruin it. And I just marvel at what a terrible job we've done with that channel. Now, still incredibly profitable when you do it right, right? I'm not telling anybody not to do email. In fact, I love email. It's just I love email 19 times a day, not 1900 times a day.
Hmm.
And maybe if you're B2B or B2C rather, or e-com or something like that, there's a story in there around higher volume. But if you're B2B, which is my whole life, the state of the art is around defining in incredibly rich detail who your ideal customer actually is. And what I think is so interesting about that ability to define is that it then enables an incredible range of things to happen because we have technologies, generative AI, various LLMs that enable us to take that very unique, deep, rich information and spin it into relevancy, right? And so that's the other thing that I am on a soapbox about is the word personalization has also been ruined by marketing.
Mhm.
Dear first name is not personalization. That's a dynamic field, right? So don't care. Relevancy, however, is super compelling. And everybody's had that experience where something's been hyper relevant. They're like, oh my God, that's that's great. I do need that, or I am interested in that. And unfortunately, there's only a handful of practitioners who are regularly able to execute that. But the technology now exists that there are no organizations that have an excuse as to why they're not.
So I think that's a really interesting thing to dive into because I think we know what we want it to do, right? We
Mm,
want these technologies, in terms of marketing outreach, to feel as powerful as your best sales outreach. Because if you have a
mm,
really good salesperson, they're going to work hard to find the right person, the right decision maker. They're going to learn about their background. They'll understand their profile. They'll reach out with a meaningful, unique kind of a topic or something that drives real value in the context of where that person's at. They've done research on the company, but all that takes like an hour
yep.
per outreach. And I think what you're saying is the technology's evolved so that through AI and machine learning, we can do that quicker in a more personalized way that meets the needs of the buyer at scale, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I'll shout out a guy that I think is really brilliant. This guy Evan Dunn, who also has a very interesting take, which is that in an age where and Martinez has said the same thing here, but in an age where we have been bludgeoning the digital channels, phone calls are really remarkable. And I bring that up because what I always caution people is that if you haven't seen one of your founders or SDRs or AEs have some consistent success in collecting information and crafting it into a really remarkable piece of outreach or engagement strategy, you're not ready for tooling.
Hmm.
Right. And phone calls are so remarkable because now we're able to get all these transcripts off of them and really understand the language that's working and what it is that people are saying in those calls. And we can extract an incredible volume and depth and breadth of insight. And so I'm really excited too about how technology is enabling us to collect and understand an incredible, array of insights that before we had, very kind of binary, did the email campaign work or not? It's like, okay, well, let's A/B test the headline or let's A/B test the, second paragraph or the call to action at the end. And it's like, yeah, but what if you just had 100 phone calls this month?
Yeah.
Right? And that stuff starts to happen live, and those are humans, right? Those are humans. So I always think that something that is getting missed here is people are jumping to the tech, and they're ignoring that in the primordial ooze of figuring out how to do this ABM and signal based stuff really well, you need humans, to be very raw and
Yeah.
and open as they can.
To really understand what's going on. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a startup yesterday, and some young founders, they're actually still in college. They're creating some tech for the hospitality industry.
Hmm.
And I love them because they're a little fearless and they're just going out there and it's the naivete combined with a little hubris. And we're just going to build apps to transform this industry. And they're still in college. It's so cute, but it's powerful. Don't use the cute word in a bad way. But anyway, but their go-to-market strategy is we're going to network through the college, talk to real people, get great word of mouth. The app is going to work. Then we're going to network through them to other real people, and they're just getting that feedback because I think what you just said is very powerful. You can't automate a bad message or a bad process and go right to tech, and you've got to really understand what is working. And you get that often through conversations,
Hmm.
trade shows, one to one network through the phone, right? But once you have that message that works, then you want to try to use it at scale. And that's really
Yeah.
where your insight and some of the technologies can come in to make that happen. So let's say you get that good message. How should an organization kind of start to make that jump toward personalization and
Yeah.
engagement at scale?
Yeah, that's great. So I think there's a couple of things. So my general framework, I was just chatting with somebody earlier today about this who was saying, one of the bazillion Slack communities that we're all members of that I find great delight in being a part of just to sit around the water cooler a little bit. But somebody was asking about, hey, a consultant came up to me and said that they could get me an extra meeting every day. And through a purely cold, kind of instantly or smartly type of an outbound campaign. All right, so well, how big is your unit TAM and what's your average contract size and blah 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 blah. And I said, okay, and how many emails is he planning to send? And the guy's talking about thousands of emails a day
Hmm.
for a single meeting. I'm like, your TAM might be big, and you're going to get that extra meeting a day for the next 90 days. And then I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. It's going to fall off a cliff, and your whole market is going to think you're dumb because your message didn't land with 99.99999% of it, and you probably screwed up your domain. So, the thing that I find really interesting is if you think about a framework of creating signal, harvesting signal, and activating signal, it really simplifies everything. And in fact, it works from demand generation all the way through to customer retention and expansion. That framework, it's very simple. But creating signal is things like going on a podcast, right? That's a way to create signal, or having a podcast, having your content, your blog, your LinkedIn material, whatever it is, and channel performing and all those things are unique business by business, of course. Um, and then harvesting signal is, are people engaging with that content? Are they
Hmm.
talking about that content? And can I figure out who they are? Oh, I put up, a post about our podcast today, and David liked it and commented, "Oh, I love the material in this podcast." And now what's really interesting on the technology side is I can programmatically know that David engaged with that content. I can see if he fits my ideal customer profile, which should be as severe as humanly freaking possible, right? And so add and enrich a ton of data. If he fits it, ping them with a message that says, hey, and this is where things can be automated because, the risk with LLMs and high scale automation is that there's such a broad array of things that you're asking machinery to do that there's a broad array of risk,
Hmm.
right? But if the motion is you specifically have machinery that says when somebody likes my content on LinkedIn, I then ensure they fit my ideal customer profile. And I then say, thanks for engaging with my post on LinkedIn about subject matter. I'd love to connect,
Yep.
right? And then you've got this opportunity to not only harvest but then activate because now I'm connected to this person. I can pull them into my CRM. I can send them an email a month out from now if they don't engage with me directly beforehand. This is where the automation helps, but again, it's not 2,500 times a day, it's 25 times a day.
Hmm.
Right. But being so obsessed with the ideal customer profile lets me know what content I should be doing, where I should be creating it, who I should partner with in creating that content, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the technologies that are so exciting are those that do that harvesting and activation. But again, it all starts from being exceedingly narrow at the top, right? Just really, really narrow. Now, signal doesn't necessarily have to be something you produce, right? So look, uh, I'm starting work with a company right now, and they do automated QA testing,
Hmm.
and you can actually figure out whether or not the QA process in a public GitHub repository is taking longer than it ought to.
Hmm.
That is a thing that can be scraped at scale. Now, do they know who we are? Maybe they don't. Probably not. It's an earlier stage company. but you can grab that signal synthetically and then make a decision about what you want to do next. Maybe you want to boost your LinkedIn content to those people to start to do a little awareness and brand building, but you're going to have an opportunity to hit them in the inbox and say, "Hey, the QA gate right on your public repo here is taking longer than it ought to, which usually means X, and we can help you in Y way." Right? Super targeted. And the thing is, again, because it's so targeted, we're not asking an LLM to make stuff up and read somebody's homepage and read our homepage and then spin up some, garbage, quote unquote, personalized outbound email. It's hyper specific. I actually think the less variability, the more likely it is to work, but it requires incredible consideration around these tiny micro campaigns.
Yeah, I love that, and what you're really doing, because I think a lot of B2B, a lot of B2B tech is you're really solving problems. And so if you can identify very specifically the people that have the problem that
Mm,
you're solving, and you can present the solution in a way that saves money, makes their lives better,
mm,
makes them money, you're really serving them in a good way, and they should want to receive those messages rather than banging them over the head with, like you said, I love what you said earlier about how marketing, you give them a toy and they ruin it. Like we've ruined email, text, phone calls, what channel have we not ruined, right? So we just kind of like pound the heck out of this. I
That's
actually, I should admit, I've done something dastardly in my LinkedIn profile to identify any AI outreach that I get. So because I'm the CEO of Now Speed, a marketing agency, but my last position is I'm a adjunct professor at Boston College, where I teach a
mm,
course on business planning. It's a
mm.
it's a part-time gig and it's fun and I love it. But I get all these outreaches that say, Dave, as an adjunct professor at Boston College, you must need more leads to convert your pipeline and grow your company. I'm like, obviously, this is not a human reading this because no human would, so it's kind of a fun thing. So they kind of activated its scale in the wrong way. So I
Mm,
don't know. That's
mhm,
that's maybe a more complex problem for AI to solve. But to understand what the role really is.
mm, mm.
But as you think about helping companies do that, like the example that you gave, what outside of understanding their ICP and then helping them craft those messages and then go out at scale, what is the magic that's happening now, or what you see happening over the next year that's going to make life better for marketers and B2B marketers to help enable these campaigns to be better, serve the user better, and
Mm.
serve the company, help them grow faster.
Yeah, it's a great. So I think there's a few things that are coming. And I would generally describe all of it as humans figuring out where they fit into a generative AI world and where generative AI fits into their world, into the work that they do. We have a bit of a crisis right now in market, particularly in mid-market and enterprise, where there's this belief that AI can just kind of do the thing, which is preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous, and it's a signal that a lot of leadership doesn't know what AI can and cannot reasonably be expected to do. Which is not to say that it doesn't continue to improve every day, but Andy Mowat, who is an incredible thought leader in the revenue operations space, and he's done some really incredible innovative work in some startups like Whispered, which he's working on right now, listens to the back channel about job postings and things like that. And he was saying recently, he was sharing some data that the vast majority of companies are, decreasing how many full-time jobs they have. They're not putting up new postings, right? They really are leaning into this idea that AI should be shrinking their headcount. I both do and do not believe that. I think the ways in which that's being approached is woefully underinformed, right? And I think the wrong things are being assumed as farm outable to AI. And that's what's going to happen, I think, over the course of the next year. AI will continue to improve. It will forever at this point. It really is remarkable the speed of innovation. But people are going to figure out where they fit in. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't still going to start, canceling people on our team and shrinking teams and canceling job recs and things like that. But I do think what's going to happen is we're going to figure out what our job is moving forward. And some of the things that I'm most excited about, I mean, it gets back to, the comment about how many phone calls can we make and understand this week, this month, this quarter. An avatar cannot have at this point and at no point in the near future a dynamic, unstructured conversation with a potential prospect and derive any meaningful follow-up questions and insights. It just can't, right?
Mhm.
You look at a message testing service like Winter, which is incredibly smart, but it is very heavy human-handed. And I think this is the thing that's so fascinating is that B2C, I was at, Nielsen and WPP for ages back earlier in my career. B2C, they spend tens of millions of dollars a year on consumer insights and research. They get people in a room and they have long conversations and they're unstructured. And it's like, I don't know what I'm trying to figure out, but we should just put a bunch of these people who look like our consumers in a room and be like, who are you people? Right? And we'll figure out a way to connect our brand DNA to that later. B2B sucks at that. It has historically sucked at
Yeah.
asking questions. And people are like, "Oh man, I can analyze the talk tracks on Gong recordings now." Yeah, but you're doing it too late.
Hmm.
You're doing it too late. There's not nearly enough research. There's not nearly enough. Let's have some unstructured conversations. I'm not trying to sell you anything. In fact, I'm trying to figure out why you wouldn't be interested in what it is that we're doing here.
Hmm.
And then I know what my content mandates are. I know where you hang out and spend your time. I know how you think about and buy things. I know what is interesting potentially about what we have here, right? And that kind of research can't be done based upon cold campaign performance and A/B testing. It can't be done, just once you have 15 AEs and SDRs making a million phone calls, because you won't get there 99.9% of the time if you're waiting to do subject matter concept research until you're at 10 million in ARR. It's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
Right. So you're going to get lucky if you get there.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a super powerful insight because I think what I heard you say is really figure out what humans do best. But also I heard you say before you scale up with all of these new technologies that are out there, figure out really what your ICP is, what your value proposition is, and then figure out exactly what the best offer is to serve the needs of the user. I think one of the things I've seen, and maybe you've seen this too, in especially in B2B tech, is companies believe that they're smarter and know more than their customers sometimes.
Mm,
And so kind
mm,
of doing that raw work of understanding what the customer wants and getting those messages out there is super important. But then don't once you get that right, don't forget that there are ways to scale it smartly. And I presume that that's what you're going to be working on with your new company. And so
yeah.
that's so exciting. So let me just ask you, we just have a few minutes left. You've been in machine learning and marketing tech for 15 years. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned or trends that you've seen that you
Mm,
think that those of us, who've I've been in the agency side watching that, using all of your tech for all this
mm.
time. But what have you learned in your career over those 15 years that you think is important for us to know about?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I would say that the appetite to move off of things like Salesforce um, is higher now than I've ever seen before. And I think we're going to see a world very soon where the core systems, quote unquote, the CRMs and the marketing automation platforms, um, I think that space will continue to have some big players, right? HubSpot's going to be, I mean, they've got 250,000 paying customers at HubSpot, right? They're fine. They're going to be around. They keep innovating. But I do think Salesforce, um, Adobe's suite of products, Marketo, Eloqua, those tools, I do think that they're going to start hemorrhaging customers. And I think they're going to be potentially hemorrhaging customers, maybe not to the other large players that do have some staying power, but to a number of startups, right? There are some companies out there that are under sheets and have millions and millions and millions of dollars in funding and are led by brilliant people who are dismantling everything that we thought we knew about how these systems are supposed to behave and the implications of a landscape that maybe doesn't have the same degree of kind of three or four core tool dominance. I think is going to be the type of thing that has incredible implications. Training, hiring, right? If you're one of 400 companies that uses a given tool, the likelihood of you finding someone to bring on board who knows that tool is highly unlikely, right? If you're hiring for intelligence and skill and camaraderie and all those types of things, you can't be tool specific anymore. Whereas if you're a HubSpot or a Salesforce shop, you can be right now, right? There's enough that you'll find someone who fits your business and who has the skill set to hire in. But I think that there's going to be a real kind of reckoning here very soon as these systems get dismantled. And these upstarts that are well backed and thinking about the entire space fundamentally differently with an AI first lens um, are going to be taking market share very quickly. So I think we're in for 5 to 10 years of um, core system tumult.
Mm.
And I think the implications of that are not yet terribly well considered.
Yeah. Well, with the massive investment across the board in marketing tech, I think the last number I saw with, you probably may know the number better than I, but there's like 10,000 marketing tech companies out there. 10,000. I get one of the funniest questions I get almost every day from a company I'm talking to is, "Hey Dave, have you heard of XYZ platform?" I'm like, "No," because
It's-
there's 10,000, and
right,
we use
right.
50 or 60 at now speed, but
Yeah,
there's another 10,000. Like there's a lot out.
that's
So,
right.
but I think your point is well taken. It's like there is such a massive investment in tech that in every niche and in every area of tech, there's going to be massive opportunities to improve, to do it better. And it's going to be some vertical specific solutions, some horizontal specific solutions. And look out, it's a the Wild West, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
you're going to be part of making that happen, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. And I don't want Scott Brinker's job. I'm glad he does it. I love that he creates the market map and seems to somehow keep up with all 10,000 every year. But God, is that a tough job to distill it all down and organize it and help the world understand what's what and where it's going. It's really, really remarkably difficult. So, shout out to Scott. I love him. He's so brilliant and so kind and so helpful to everyone. Just what a value add that guy is. Like market glue, I swear. But yeah, it's going to be, these next few years are going to be nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, thanks for taking the time today. I think this was a really insightful conversation about where the market's going, some of the trends we're seeing in AI and personalization and ABM, and the I think one of the takeaways that I've got from you is that the need for really honing in on the ICP and the value proposition and exactly who your market is before you automate at scale, but automate at scale when you're ready. So it's all of those things together. So great conversation. If some of our listeners want to connect with you personally and learn more about you or some of the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect?
Yeah, shoot me a note on LinkedIn. So just Nick Zeckets, Zeckets. You won't find another one on there. The name is mine. And I'm always happy to connect and post over there.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time today, Nick.
Thanks, David. Thank you.